Welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. I have a great show today. I have a brother and sister who have teamed up to create a successful real estate brokerage here in Northeast Florida. As a matter of fact, one of them was in their high school Stars of the Future Club. Just remember, you met them here on the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. One has a doctorate of law, or JD. Let's welcome the founder broker, Tom Jervis, and his star agent, Katie Jervis, of the KST Group to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming on. Glad we met. You guys are kind of under the radar for me. I don't know why, but at the Real Producers event and seeing you there and getting introduced. And then I obviously dug in and saw what you guys are doing out there. And I think you are the first. I've had husband and wife teams. Mm-hmm. I've had girlfriend type teams together, but not a brother and sister, which is probably very rare, because I definitely couldn't do it with my sister. So,
we often get mistaken for
yeah, we do.
For being in a relationship.
We really do. Yeah, we have to clarify. Yes.
Quite frequently.
Yeah, if that's one thing people get out of the podcast today, it needs to be that. We are, in fact, brother and sister.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, we'll definitely that will definitely be one of the questions. I mean, I know I have it here on my list. Because we're going to dig into some of the dynamics, of the KST Group and how you guys are doing it. But I want to start off the show. Literally, I mean, where are you guys from?
Yeah. We were both born in England, raised in the UK for a little bit, and then we ended up moving over to the Bahamas when we were younger. I think you were 8. Yeah. I was 3 or 4 at the time, and then when she was getting ready to go to middle school. At the time, the schooling wasn't, it is now, but it wasn't quite what my parents were looking for education side of things, I guess. So ended up moving across to South Florida. So
are your parents U.S. citizens and just were in there?
No.
Or they're
Whole
actually
family's
British?
British.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because when you said that, and I'm listening, because I know you guys get to ask us all the questions every time. Where is the accent? Yeah. I get it asked all the time because I'm from New York, but I ended up really growing up. I moved to Cape Cod when I was 7. Everyone's like, "Where's the accent?" Because I'm not from South Boston.
Yeah. Well, it comes out every once in a while.
Yeah.
No, ours are long gone. I think some people think she might have a little bit every once in a while, but
I'm sure there's certain words or phrases.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's funny. I've had conversations with clients, and I'll say something, then they will say, "Hold on a second. What you said was not American. Where are you from?" So it comes out it comes out that way. But otherwise, most people think we're from here, but we're not.
Yeah.
Adds to the story.
I don't know if it's the T's. I'm picking up on your T's.
Okay.
Well, you're not.
Yes, that's it. Wow,
you're going to be analyzing this whole podcast.
Yeah, that didn't take long at all. I'm impressed.
This is gonna blow up because we got the British accent on there. We got a great show. All right.
Yeah.
So, Katie, you actually you go on to like you said, you guys moved to South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me step back a little bit. I don't want to jump into college just yet. I mean, what's it like? It sounds like for most of your high school, you were in the Bahamas. How old were you when?
Yeah, so we left the Bahamas. I was 8. She was.
Yeah, I was going into
11 or
middle
12.
school when we left. So the predominant for most of middle school and high school, all of us were in South Florida. However, at the time, we were still spending a significant amount of our holidays, and Dad was still back and forth for work. So the majority, I guess, of our trips and vacations and things like that were Bahamas, very much there for a significant period of time.
It was a second home, but like all of our education, our meaningful education was in the U.S.
Yeah.
Okay.
All of it in South Florida. We went to the same school, so from when we landed in South Florida till we graduated.
What kind of work was your dad doing? Was he working for the government or banking, or what was it?
He got into real estate development, actually, in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's come full circle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, my other thing is obviously the reconstruction they had to have after, I can't remember the name of the hurricane that sat on the Bahamas there. Mm-hmm. We had a few years ago, and how they had to reconstruct. Although the islands are pretty good at way they have built themselves to withstand storms like that, but that thing sat on that island for so many days at a time, or on islands, I should say. That just made me think of that reconstruction part. All right, so you go to South Florida, you go up there, you decide you want to get. I assume law was your vision as a young person? Is that really where you wanted to go with it?
So it's interesting. I went to law school. weirdly enough, actually not to be a lawyer. I don't think I ever really had intentions of being your transactional or litigation lawyer. I'd always kind of had a passion, I guess, for nonprofit work. And so that was where I saw my law career taking me at the time. When I was in law school, I was working for a nonprofit. I did kind of dabble in and out of some law firm and get that experience, but my heart was kind of always in nonprofit work. And so after graduation, I moved to London and kind of went in the nonprofit space, but I do have a law degree. I did graduate in 2015, yes.
Well, since we're on that subject, obviously at some point you decide to change careers. Was there something about that you thought it was that it wasn't, or maybe it could have been the company you worked for? What made you change your idea, come back to the States, and obviously we'll eventually talk about how you jump in here with your brother.
Yeah, so I was actually at the end of my contract in London, and it was kind of one of those decisions where I had to decide, did I see myself being in London forever, or did I eventually want to be back in the U.S.? And I loved being in the U.S., so that kind of seemed to be a no-brainer. And then the opportunity presented itself for me to get involved with Tom and kind of what he was doing in the real estate space. So I said, why not? Let's give it a go, and here we are.
Yes. So, all right, so we're inching along here in this time scale. Tom, we're going to go back a little bit. You don't go as far as in school, if I saw correctly. You just get your bachelor's degree, which there's this thing that says that the A students work for the C students. Does that follow here?
Something like that. Yeah. I certainly wasn't an academic, but no, we very much worked together. But no, generally speaking, I mean, I was not a big school guy, but came up here just to go to Jacksonville University. So I'm a graduate of JU. That was really the one thing that brought me up to Jacksonville. We didn't really have any ties up here or anything. Thought about playing baseball, didn't end up working out in that sense, and then kind of got involved at school and ended up enjoying my time out in Jacksonville. And so was there from 2012 to 2016. After I graduated, did a little bit of, did an internship while I was in school at Axe Advisors for financial advisor there, and then hopped over with a friend at Prudential for a little bit and kind of did some more in that space. And didn't really fall in love with that industry. It wasn't something that I really necessarily saw myself doing. I think
it's tough.
It's a challenging business.
Real estate's tough, but at least people could touch and smell a house.
Yeah,
it's a little harder.
And I just think the conversations you're having are generally a little bit more enjoyable, a little bit more optimistic. It's not typically something like, hey, you're making a phone call and like, hey, when you die, you got to make sure you got your life insurance policy, right?
Right.
It's kind of a morbid conversation. Now I'm generalizing the business, but overall, like, really enjoyed the relationship aspect of it, and there's obviously a lot of crossover between the two in terms of interacting with clients and getting them organized with a plan. But I was chatting with my dad one day, really, and he would just kind of broach the subject with me. He's like, hey, have you ever thought about it? And I was like, well, why don't I just look into it? And not to really breeze through it too quickly, but ended up looking into it, and then got started at one of the bigger firms in Jacksonville, and then shortly thereafter we decided to open up our own brokerage.
So how much, you said, because you said your dad was in real estate development, how much were you guys, I'm saying you weren't involved directly, but as kids growing up, just knowing what he was doing?
Yeah. I mean, we lived on the community, right? So we built about 76 houses in the Bahamas. And we lived there, so we obviously saw it and interacted, but I don't know if we would say we were, like, heavily engrossed in what he was doing necessarily, but obviously, like, we literally lived it. So you're not unaware of what's going on, but I don't think we were, like, sitting at the dinner table, hey, Dad, how was work? That kind of component to it. But yeah.
I think it's also kind of funny, like, that definitely wasn't really part of his trajectory. He was in a different industry prior, and really it wasn't in either of our trajectories up until a few years ago either. So I think it is just from a family perspective, we got to see what he was doing. He enjoyed it, obviously, which is why kind of the idea came to fruition. So yeah, definitely a full circle moment, but I wouldn't say, like you said, we didn't sit around talking about real estate. I think we just maybe are all naturally people. I'm
a strong believer. A lot of our young people, of course, today they can go online and see a lot of different other careers. But as old as I am, I mean, I didn't have cell phones till after college. We obviously weren't using email or have anything to have to do with the internet. In as far as careers are concerned or where people go, I think you only know what you know. Like if your parents were a teacher or a bank, whatever, you kind of have an idea what that's all about, and that where you know that, well, that's a viable option. I've seen that. I know kind of what's going on there, so to speak, even though you weren't directly, he was building houses, you're selling
exposed to it.
You're exposed to it,
Yeah.
seeing, what's going on and what's behind the scenes of that there. All right. So Tom, you start KST first, before you go in there. So this large brokerage, I mean, you can name them if you want. I don't name the other brokerages, but you can find there.
Yeah.
But, and between that brokerage and those previous financial firms, because I think a lot of what they do as far as prospecting and so forth cross relates to what
definitely does.
A lot of that. So what are some of the things you took from there? You took, when you're starting envisioning KST Group and actually creating it, what are some of the things you're imagine you're putting your ideas either in your head or down on paper? Some of the things you stole from them because of your experience. I wouldn't say stole. Some of the things you experienced there that you took to KST Group.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the main couple points and sort of takeaways I had from my experience there was probably first and foremost was the environment. In speaking of the office and the culture that they created, I think unfortunately in this business, it is one of those where you feel as though you're on your own, right? Like there's this sort of idea in the industry, you're an independent contractor, you got to figure it out on yourself. Like, sure, you may get one or two things from your brokerage, maybe a few postcards, maybe a couple websites or whatever.
CRM.
But it's like, it's pretty much like, hey, once you get in and onboarded, like, good luck.
Right.
And I didn't think there was a lot of camaraderie and sort of participation from within the office to, like, kind of help each other out. There's a lot of backstabbing and a lot of, I guess, intercompany competition, which, in my opinion, there's a lot of business to go around. Like, it should be a little bit more supportive. And then the other component was I didn't feel that there was necessarily a place, and I was so young in the industry and, probably... I just didn't see at the time that there was necessarily a place for younger agents to go and truly get support and help in growing the business. I mean, obviously, it sounds really cool. It's a very glamorized business now. I'll go show a few houses and make a bunch of money. And, like, when you get in the business, you realize that's just not the case, right? But I didn't think that at the time, again, like that there was too much of a place or somebody that was focusing on bringing some youth into the industry because it is an attractive industry for a lot of youth. I think we've seen, particularly even before COVID, but since COVID, like the whole work from home craze, a lot of people have jumped into the industry because, one, they see it on Netflix and TV and all that good stuff, but two, there is a lot of opportunity in the business. So generally, we wanted to build a brokerage that was supportive of agents and genuinely help them get started in their career. So
no, that's an excellent insight. I mean, because I've said it many times on the podcast. When I grew up, the typical real estate agent was a spouse of someone who was already had that career corporate job. Yeah, and they had that money coming in, and the real estate was more or less a hobby that led to just grew and grew depending on the area that you were in and how fast things were going on.
And it's like after 20 years, I'll have a good book of business. Right?
Yeah, and after this is the 143rd episode, so 130 plus real estate agents. I've had a lot of sub 30-year-old agents on that are really doing well, leading teams. So your vision there that, hey, there's this need, there's this void here that someone could literally come out of college or not even have a college degree, let alone if they've can present themselves and have conversations and have no problem obviously prospecting. We'll get into that, but there's a huge void.
There was a massive void,
So you're over there. Is he painting this vision for you at this time, or is this going on while you're over in London and you're not really knowing what he's doing?
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of off to the races with it. I think he had a vision, and I 100% supported what he was intending to do with.
Was he telling you what he was doing? I'm trying to dig into this.
Yes. No,
brother-sister relationship.
No, absolutely. And if you think about it, like, I was one of those people. I was coming out of a career. I didn't have any prior real estate experience. So I was one of those agents that was sitting here saying, okay, how can I grow my book of business? So I didn't know Jacksonville. I'd been here once before, I think, to visit you in college, and I was here for 24 hours. So we hopped on a plane, and I was like, I'm starting a new career in a new city. He was the only person I knew at the time. So in a weird way, I was exactly what he intended to build.
To work
and
off.
so I kind of became the guinea pig for how is this going to work for other agents.
Right.
And I think it's turned out pretty okay. We seem to have figured it out. So yeah, there's
what are you at 3 or 4 years now?
I got licensed in the spring of 2020. So
spring. Oh, wow. Right. Okay. So we're
right on 3.
Right at 3
relatively
years
new.
and really only 2.5 because for the first 6 months they wouldn't even, people were afraid to even talk to each other.
Yeah. Exactly.
Let alone a new agent actually go out and interact with somebody in practice. You know, talking to someone face to face. Interesting.
Yeah.
So I always dig into what everyone's that first 12 months were like. So since Katie said we're on you, we'll go back in time to talk about his first 12 months. But you come over and you join him. What is Tom having you do? What has he learned? What is he pouring into you?
So I think the first year, at least for me, was we were trialing a lot of things. We were seeing what worked, what didn't work. I've been very lucky, I think, to have done really well in my first 3 years in the business, and I think that's a testament to what he built and what he saw for the company. Just from a first 12 months perspective, we were testing lead generation, we were testing marketing, we were kind of thinking through what did we want in an agent, what did our team culture look like. So that was kind of, I feel like, what our first 12 months looked like. Obviously, it was crazy with COVID, so real estate looked a little different then and was a little more hectic than it does now. But from a brokerage level, that kind of was, at least my first 12 months, was me learning the business, understanding Jacksonville and kind of what Jacksonville had to offer, putting myself out there, and then at the same time working alongside him to kind of build the brokerage and get that going.
Do you, and how I want to word this question, just knowing when you started and knowing what was going on at the time, as far as, even though COVID was going on, Florida was hot. I mean, it's still hot, but it was gangbusters, especially that period. And then as we go into 21, where I think obviously attracted a lot of people to get licensed and so forth, because it looked easy. You put a house up, you had multiple offers, probably within 48 hours, and you were under contract probably by the third day, and closing within 45 days of that. And so it looked really easy, and you were able to, but where some people obviously get started and, it's a ghost town, I think Mike Rolowitz, I think he went like 6 months before he actually closed his first deal. Still had a great first year, but it was all in the second 6 months. For you, were you getting some at-bats really without having to, at that moment in time, having to really try as hard? It's different now, today, than it was when you first get started, as far as customers making decisions and faster, and obviously, the inventory was still challenged, but I don't think as challenged as it is now, and you guys can,
Yeah, so I think, obviously I didn't have a network. A lot of people that were doing real estate in 2020 in Jacksonville probably had some sort of network already established. I didn't, so I was heavily dependent on our lead gen system. I did get leads, obviously, relatively quickly, and I was working deals pretty quickly. So I would say, my first 6 months, I think I got licensed at the end of April in 2020, and my first deal closed in June of 2020. Closed about $7 million in my first 6 months. So, I mean, I was thrown right into it, and it went well. So I don't know if that's the norm or not.
I'm gonna come back to you here I think most people will be like, especially the older group, are like, oh, you had it easy. That's what they're gonna tell you.
Yeah, I mean, we focus primarily on the buy side too. So I think it's funny because COVID allowed listing agents, and again, had a couple of listings, but primarily focus with buyers. I think for listing agents, it was relatively easy. However, not necessarily true for buyers agents who were extremely competitive. You're under pressure. You're dealing with clients that have to make decisions so quickly. I don't know if it was as easy for buyers agents as it was for sellers agents in COVID.
Let's dig into it, and both of you comment on it. I mean, it was a time, and I think there's still houses today, if they're priced right, are still getting multiple offer situations.
Sure.
But you're coming in, here you don't have a lot of experience whatsoever, but now you're relying on him to what a couple years, right? Basically, you have on her as far as putting forth that right offer. What are some of the conversations that you guys were having to make sure you were presenting the best for your buyer at that time when it was hot? Really
I
hot?
think it was just strategy. It was talking about how can we be most competitive with what our clients were able to offer at that time. Obviously doing it in a way that wouldn't put our client at risk as best as we could, obviously with different wave contingencies and things like that. But it really is just strategy. And to be honest, I think that's a lot of where my law experience came in as well, is just negotiation and strategy. Like that is what I was taught for 3 years, is you've got to represent somebody and you've got to put your best argument forward. And so for me, that's what I was doing. I was putting our best offer forward, and he's always going to be my sounding board. Even now with a lot more business under my belt, we're always going back and forth on deals.
Well, but as a lawyer, you're playing chess. Right?
Yeah.
You got to look, well, if I do this, this is what's going to happen to be the next 3 moves, right? And I think that in the negotiation, you tell me, because you were on that side, that's what you were doing from the negotiation side, is you were making the strategic offer, obviously, to get, to be that final 2 or 3, and then maybe you had to go in, okay, then if they counter, we're going to do this, knowing what your customer is doing. But you were actually planning 2 or 3 steps ahead.
Always.
Ahead, and I think that would make the most sense of your lawyering, because you don't ask the question unless you know the answer, right? As a lawyer.
Exactly.
So Tom, you come in here. You tell me the other side here. She's getting started. Oh, actually, I wanted to step back with you. We're going to take a few minutes with you.
Yeah.
Your first 12 months.
Yeah, probably a little bit different than hers. Not quite as successful. When I got in, I think almost my first 12 months were at the same brokerage where I started, and just a handful of transactions. I mean, predominantly from friends and family, which was probably a little bit part of, I guess, the core principles behind founding KST was like, this is just unreasonable to expect that people can come in and only make a couple deals in their first 12 months. So a lot of the focus shifted after we had opened up KST to like, okay, how do we generate business? How do we find opportunities for people? And so
I'll tip a little bit on, you have her come over, but what you learned or didn't learn, realize you didn't learn, that when she comes in, she's your first guinea pig, as she says.
Well, I guess
what did you take from that other brokerage in your first 12 months, or what didn't you take?
So we'll put some dates behind it, might help clarify. So I opened it technically in the end of 2017. So she didn't come over until 2020. So there was a 2-year period where I was basically working at KST for all of 2018. It was predominantly myself, and then 2019 we took on our first agent. His name's Jordan Marson. He got started with us in January.
He's doing fairly well.
He's doing great.
Last 12 months. I looked at his last 12 months numbers.
He's crushing it. Yeah, he's doing awesome. He's been an absolute gem of a find for us. Was ended up a connection through mutual friends, and we got together. I don't know, probably 6 or 8 months before he ended up joining. But anyhow, so he joined in the beginning of 2019, and then a friend of mine from college shortly after, in the middle of 2019, joined. And so it was really the 3 of us for the most part of 2019, and really starting to figure out how to close business. So I didn't do a ton of transactions before I opened KST. It was literally a handful of deals. And then when we opened up, we started building out a lead generation system, and then that started to generate a lot more opportunities, where I got my feet really wet in real estate and really started to understand on a transaction level how the business operates and what was needed.
The first brokerage you're with, though, because you're going to base a lot of your, even into the future of how, when you stepped in there day one versus her stepping into your office day one, from the standpoint of the structure. If you listen to the podcast, one of the things we always dig into, because I'm always hoping there's if there's a new agent listening, someone thinking about getting in the business, or someone who has been in the business a year, 2, 3, and just not really producing because they don't know what they don't know, right?
Sure.
And so they're hopefully listening to the podcast. And one thing that I talk about is finding the right brokerage, finding that right mesh, whether it's a brokerage that really specializes in green real estate agents, taking them from 0 to wherever. Did that first brokerage really have a structure for new young agents like yourself?
Yeah, so I would say they had some initial training involved. There's a couple week period where you're kind of learning contracts and I guess the core functions of the industry. But as far as actual, I would say practical things or takeaways, there probably wasn't too many. I think it was more of a traditional brokerage in the sense of like it's kind of sink or swim. You're on your own. It was a very big brand.
Is this one of the large branded?
Yeah.
Is this one of the large brands?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was the number one brokerage at the time when I joined. Yeah, in Jacksonville.
Knowing what you know now and mixing with the Jack's Real producers, it sounds like if you were looking today, you know a lot of other brokerages that you probably would have gone to because they would
probably a little bit more with what I was. Yeah.
Yeah, structure and getting it started. Because I
Sure.
think, there's Ingalls and Volker. They like to deal with, someone who's, been producing type of thing. I mean, like, obviously they would love, Katie's production or the other gentleman you mentioned. That's where they want to go. But there's others who like Watson. Obviously they do their school. They start, they love, there's a lot of great agents in this town all started at Watson at one time or another, right?
Yeah.
Because that's their bread and butter. But having those processes and systems in place is the term that's been given to me.
Yeah.
And you guys have been doing some trial and error and working through that. What have you found as far as building those processes and systems? Because now you've brought on other agents and now you have assistants and so forth. How important was it to spend some time of actually putting those foundations together?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredibly important. I think it's very difficult to last in this business if you don't have a sustainable process and something that you can replicate over a long period of time. I will stress till the day I leave this business with my agents, it's about consistent work over a long period of time, and there's just no shortcuts. That's just literally a fact of the industry. It's like you've got to put your head down and just work for 6, 12, 18 months before you actually start to see legitimate results. Now, what you're doing in that time is probably dependent on kind of the advice you're getting and where you are and what brokerage you're at. But I think generally speaking, like having a good system and process, particularly in the day and age we live in, I mean, I'm kind of a nerd about technology and things of that nature. Like it's just really important on the agent level to have those pieces in place. And at least from my perspective, I think it's changed quite a bit since I was first getting into it. But there wasn't necessarily that brokerage that provided a legitimate tech suite that was both user-friendly and actually provided results as well. And so building something out along those lines was pretty important for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely, I've been doing this 18 years and last 5, 6 years from the retail side, actually out, with the agents versus working in a call center environment. And I've heard a lot of the big names talk about they talk about technology.
It's a buzzword, right?
Yeah, it's a buzzword. I think I asked the question differently now than I did when I first started the show about education. Well, I went over there because they had great education or something or great technology. Well, I found out that's basically relative to what you think. Maybe where you're coming for what your experience, but actually putting the rubber to the road and actually making it happen.
And it's only as good as the person using it, right?
Yeah.
Like you could have, an MIT grad build you the best CRM in the world, but if you're not going to use it, then you're not going to use it, and it's not going to help you.
Right.
So it does really depend. That's why I think the user-friendly component is quite important, because if it's very difficult to learn, if there's a lot of moving pieces to it, the agents just won't do it, right? They got in the business because they want to sell houses, they want to show properties, they want to meet with potential clients. They don't want to be sitting in the back office all day. Otherwise, there's plenty of other roles that might fit them, right? So they want to be out in public. And so if they have to spend hours on end learning a CRM, they're probably not going to do it. And so ours is really straightforward. It's Follow Boss. It's pretty well known. It's all across the industry, but it's just incredibly easy to use. And there's a lot of functionality that you can build out on the back end that doesn't require a lot of the agents to use, but it creates a lot of functionality within their workflow.
You just made a statement that I find in corporate America, we were talking a little bit about pre-show and my little corporate America experience with the podcast and so forth, but to understand what it is that a real estate agent, there's slight deviations of it, but what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Right. They need to be the face. They need to be, whether it's they're making phone calls, knocking on doors, whatever they need to be doing that and not spending the back end, making sure the birthday cards are going out and those types of things. At what point did you, I mean, it sound to me, between the two of us, it's common sense.
Sure.
But actually, if you do say this a lot to middle management in corporate America, they look at you like
you're crazy.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And at what point do you come to that conclusion that as the leader of the KST Group need to either devise those processes and systems, get the right software involved here, technology involved, so that Katie can be doing what she does best. When does that come to your vision? Is it through trial and error? Or?
Yeah, definitely through trial and error, and probably as we got through 2019. So, I mean, and obviously as you grow, different things are required, right? So when it's just me and one or two other guys in the office, it's a lot more hands-on. Like, you can manually do a lot more things. As you're getting 10, 15, 20 agents in, you need some just a more efficient way to handle the business. And so really, I mean, our tech suite is always a work in progress. I'm always trying to kind of figure different things out and implement different things. Obviously, the AI world has exploded in the last 6 months, and so that brings in a whole nother challenge. But as far as when we understood that, I mean, I think a lot of it comes back to like understanding what the actual agent wants to do. I have this saying that I tell them that if you're in the office 0 hours a week, you're probably doing no deals. If you're in the office 40 hours a week, you're probably doing no deals, right? It's this happy balance in between of like, you need to be in the office, get your admin done, get your follow-up done, but also you need to be out showing houses and meeting with clients and things. So it was understanding as, the first handful of agents, including Katie, that we hired, like, got off to a really good start. I mean, they've all done well, but like understanding that the workflow that it took them to get there and realizing like, okay, if they want to scale past $5, $8, $10 million, like the time has to come from somewhere, right? You can't just magic more hours in the day. And so with recognizing that, I was like, all right, well, first off, if I can cut out some of the prospecting that they need to do, great, that's awesome. If I can cut out some of the admin work that they need to do, great. It frees them up more time. My thing is always, and the agents probably laugh at me about it, it's just like, I just want them to be as efficient as possible.
Yeah, productivity is
it's
huge.
A huge thing for us. It's just efficiency.
Well, like I said, it really, a lot, whether I picked it up obviously from listening to podcasts. I followed a gentleman in the mortgage world for a while and actually took some coaching from them. And, he was explaining, this is why he's had $1 million month, like made $1 million W-2. It's made $10 million a year, how he's built his mortgage team, throughout the world. And it's because of having, just like the real estate agent as a loan officer, we're out prospecting as well, where we have to be out there entertaining, showing up at real producers, shaking hands, and all that type of stuff. And understanding that's where that is income producing. It looks like fun, and we are having fun because that's why we do, because we like what we do, right? And I think a lot of people, they're discounting the fact that you're taking someone out to lunch, maybe a possible client who's looking at beach houses and going to spend $3-4 million. Yeah, you're going to take them out to lunch. And
you should.
Yeah, and I think of Shelby Florence she's with Compass now. She was talking about, like, she has restaurants because she's in the luxury area, where she has standing reservations on Friday night because she knows her clients are, she might have a client and say, hey, I got this great restaurant, I already have a reservation for you, just go on over. Type of, and understanding, that is fun, but that is actually part of the relationship building process. And being on the back end, ordering an appraisal or making sure the title work was ordered, that's not income producing part. But I can take some of my income, because we do make good income over here, and pay someone to do that.
Or the brokerage could do it.
Well, you're bringing on this person. So Katie, you come in. He's gone through a couple years of trial and error. You're growing. Do you feel you found your I'm going to say just your honey spot, your go-to prospecting, what you do best? Do you feel you found it yet?
I'd like to think so. I'd like to think I'm getting close, at least. I think it's a culmination of a variety of different things. I don't think there's necessarily one thing when it comes to prospecting, because obviously there's buyers and sellers all over the place. I think obviously we do have our lead gen system that is really what built my business, and especially my first year really got me going. I think, but otherwise it's just building relationships with people, putting yourself out there, like you've mentioned, going to events, being a little bit more facey, using your friends, using your past clients, getting referrals. I think it's a multitude of those things that kind of help you build a successful business over time. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to the relationships. It's like, how many genuine relationships and connections can you build with people? They might not be a transaction now, but they could be a year from now or 2 years from now. So I think in terms of prospecting, it's a multitude. It's all of those things. Right. I don't necessarily think it's just one thing.
Well, I mean, so I assume you're still... You came here, didn't know anybody. You didn't have any friends here. You had his friends.
They weren't buying houses.
They weren't buying houses.
just beer.
Yeah.
So you're obviously having to make the financial expenditure for those leads to come in. Where has your business shifted? Are you still taking a little bit of those, or have you shifted more into the, I call it organic, which is referrals, past clients, and just constantly staying top of mind of those?
Yeah, there's definitely been a shift in my business, especially over the last 12 months. I was definitely, like I said, very lead heavy my first 12 and a half, 24 months. And then I would say this last year, it's definitely become past clients, word of mouth, and sphere. I do still take a few leads from the business, but the majority of my business, I would say now, is past clients or people that I've just met out and about, or referrals from friends and people I've worked with previously.
This is generally a tough question to answer because I don't think many people think about it, but you mentioned relationships and building relationships with the clients. What are some things that you do, and it could be plainly just like, well, when I meet a new client, I like to just, I like to go meet them for coffee somewhere, or, walk us through how Katie builds relationships initially.
So if it was kind of a lead that we were getting through the company, then I'm first thing is always going to be a phone call and just really understanding who that person is, what they like, what they don't like. The first part of the conversation isn't really house specific. I'm just getting to know them as a person. And then from there, typically trying to get them to a showing, depending on how close they are to wanting to purchase. And then it is just getting to know them, whether that's coffee, whether that's lunch, whether that's at showings, inviting them to some of the events that we have. It's just nurturing that relationship over time. Whereas I think it's a lot easier if they're already your friend, or if they're your family, or if they're a past client. Like you already, the relationship is already there. And I think one of the things that we tell our agents a lot too is the money is in the nurture. It's in the building the relationship. They might not necessarily be a client now, but they could be a client 6 months from now. So I think from an agent perspective, if you can do something that's genuine and you can be consistent with it, and you can build just really good relationships with people over time, your business is naturally just going to grow and can grow relatively quickly. And I think that's just it. It's just being genuine, find what works for you, find something that you can do day in and day out, and it will happen.
Give us an example. What are you doing day in and day out? Come on.
Okay.
Are you going to is the gym a place? I don't know. Going to the beach?
She does go every day.
Yeah.
I do. So I'm very much a creature of habit. I love my routine. So it typically is, I have met clients from the gym. That's a big one for me. What else do I do? I think the other thing is, like, in our database, I'm consistently checking in with clients that have even showed a slight interest. I'm always in the MLS looking at data and properties that have sold, or, the standard realtor thing.
Are you setting like, hey, I'm gonna talk to 15 to 20 people today, and it might be making some of those, just some touches of those semi-interested people. Are you staying disciplined to something?
I am extremely disciplined, and I think that's probably what has helped me in this business is, yes, I am very consistent with my follow-up and trying to talk to more people and connect with past clients. And so, yeah, I would say that is my level of discipline is probably what has helped me a lot.
I assume most of your clients are older.
So actually, no, it's a mix. Ironically, maybe when I got leads from the business, they were probably a little bit older, but I think as I've settled more into Jacksonville and I've met people, and I guess I've just got more involved in the community, the demographic has shifted just a little bit. But I love all my clients. I actually think I talk to probably 90% of people on a regular basis that I've done business with.
Right. Well, it's just, the difference of, like you said, like whether you knew the person or not, but if they're a similar age, you're in that peer group, right? You might do some similar things and so forth versus, sometimes when you're out, Atlantic Beach, Jack, you're out there at the beaches, you could be running into that person that wants to buy that $2 million house, and they're retired, or there's some retired corporate executive where they're going to be 3 months here and 3 months back up in Maine or whatever they are, in New York or something like that.
I think that's one of the things that I've loved most about the business is every person that you meet is different. And so although the process of buying and selling a house is relatively the same, you go under contract, you've got your inspection, those kind of things are very consistent. It's the people that are different, and I think that's what I love the most is no 2 days are the same, no two transactions are the same, and so I think I've just genuinely enjoyed building relationships with people, and that's, I think, probably what I love the most about the job.
It sounds like you have a natural curiosity of them.
I definitely do.
What they do, where they came from, and that sort of thing.
It's a huge part of this business. Just being curious.
I love, like I said, I've yet to have a bad transaction. I genuinely love every client that I've worked with, and I think that is why I can be disciplined, is because I just enjoy it. I know the results will come, and the meeting the people has been a huge fun thing for me.
Excellent. So you're go back to Tom. You're creating KST. You just felt you could just do it better, which is what every entrepreneur, right? That's probably the bottom line. They feel they could do something better, and that's it. So, did you have, or have you developed? One of the cornerstones of personal development. A lot of people have been on. It's who you surround yourself with. Who did you have a mentor? I mean, was your dad giving you who are people that you reached out to learn those things that you didn't know?
Yeah, so it's definitely my dad. I was fortunate at where I started that I had a really fun broker. He was younger as well, kind of in his mid-30s. Super nice guy and kind of taught me a few things. And then there's also another gentleman, an agent at the brokerage who does really well himself. And he kind of helped me on a transactional level. From a business level, it was predominantly my dad. I mean, he's done a variety of different things, been in multiple industries, started businesses, ran businesses, was an executive, things of that nature. So just has a wealth of experience. And the thing that I guess he's probably, impressioned on me quite a bit. It's just that fundamentally business principles are pretty similar across all industries, particularly in the sales profession, right? It's just the products that changes, but the core functions of the job, being a good person, following up, all the things she just discussed, pretty similar regardless of whether you're selling shoes or houses, right? And so understanding that and recognizing that, and then just kind of learning as you go. I mean, a lot of it is kind of trial by fire. I believe in that for the agents as well. Like when they get in, they're on, even if they're a brand new agent, they're on the phones the first day, and they're starting to prospect a little bit and just get comfortable, because the only way you're truly going to learn is by doing it. It's kind of one of the ways we handle our trainings as well. Is like we'll have weekly trainings and different topics, but at the same time, like if I train them on something today that they don't use for the next 6 months, well, like when it pops up, it's like they're going to come and ask me again anyways. And so a lot of the time we'll kind of see what they need on an as-is basis, and that helps a lot. But as far as kind of mentorship and sort of that person you can call on, it's my dad. He's in the office every day. More than anybody. He's kind of involved. Like, not that we're not this big corporate entity, but more like a board level, if that makes sense. Just
a consultant.
Yes.
He keeps us on track.
So. He's not involved in the day-to-day. He's not licensed. He doesn't sell. He doesn't do any of that. Right. But he's a soundboard, gives a lot of good advice, and just generally very well experienced. And
he's a little, I think what's helpful for us too is like he's removed from the day-to-day of the business, so he can he's the one that's a little bit step back, and so he can give us, I can go to him with frustrating clients. He's not involved in the transaction, so he can say, okay, breathe, like, and he he's a little bit far removed, and it's the same for him too. Like when you're in the weeds every single day, you're talking to agents, you're looking at who we can recruit, we're looking at how we can grow, and he's saying, okay, let's kind of see sometimes when you're in the business, it's hard to see the forest from the trees, and so he kind of gives us that. Take a pause and step back.
Yeah,
he's extremely intelligent.
I refer back to Rocket Fuel. Sarah Rocco gave me the book, but it talks about visionaries and integrators. But you do need that person outside looking in they're looking at the, to give the sports analogy, they're looking at the video and they're going in and analyzing and then cutting out the clips for you and saying, hey, you should have been over here, not over there at this time. You need that person that can sit back 100%. And a lot of companies, unfortunately, don't have that person.
Correct.
And I think a lot of his success too, like he's a visionary, like he can see long term. And like I said, like where we're kind of looking at day to day, maybe 3 to 6 months out, he's looking at like, okay, what is the plan for the future? And he can see that. And I think his success has always been that he is that visionary. And so he provides that leadership and vision for the company, which I think he and I are both very fortunate to feel like we have that.
That is priceless. What are some mistakes have you made?
Ooh, that's a fun one.
Look right in the camera for this one.
Yeah. No, that's so tricky. I think that's such a tough sort of I'm not sure if like mistake is the right word, right?
Lesson,
like it's
maybe?
Fail forward. I call it failing
it's just
forward.
the classic like cliche. Oh, well, you learn from everything, right? God, I don't know. I'm not. I was just trying to be conceited about it.
I'll dig in a little bit to see if I can draw it out of you a little bit. You obviously, when you're with the previous brokerage, you had the vision of KST. You started. You are the guy.
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that maybe you had some sort of expectations to happen? Obviously, a lot of us we will get excited and think they're going to happen faster than they actually do.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's probably the right direction of it, is probably just underestimating the length of time that it may take to get where we want to be. I think when you're making a plan and you're kind of devising what you want to do with a company, a lot of things look good on paper, right? And then you have to put it into practice, and then that's where all these other variables come into play, and probably just maybe not anticipating a few different things popping up, but it's certainly nothing, catastrophic or tragic or anything of that nature that, set us back so much. But I don't know, probably just having, anticipating things moving much quicker than maybe they have. But at the end of the day, like I always say this, is we feel pretty fortunate to be in the position we are and being pretty young in the industry as well, and having a lot of experience and having a lot of opportunity in Jacksonville. So, sure. I think maybe if you asked me 5 years ago, it would be a little bit further along. Like, of course, you'd say yes, but
you'd have 100 agents and doing
I
all
also
this
didn't
money.
I mean, nobody saw COVID and stuff coming too, right? So like that all happens, and then obviously as we transition through last year and rates triple overnight, then obviously that has a different effect on your business. So probably just expecting things to happen a little bit quicker than they did. But I wouldn't necessarily say there's one, like something that we did that totally blew up in our face or was like completely wrong, or like hired wrong people, or like, bought leads from the wrong place, or like built wrong software, something of that nature. There wasn't one thing in particular, but probably, I think we would have liked.
Well, I think we all fail. Marketing is one of those areas where you kind of can fumble through, and because you're trying to find out that thing. But this question goes to each of you. Well, you guys choose who wants to answer this one first. You might have to think about this. What have your young people? What have you learned about yourself since you started in real estate? Learned about yourself. Maybe something you weren't doing, didn't think you could do.
Yeah, I mean, I think leadership's definitely one of those things that probably you don't anticipate being good at, and there's probably always a little bit of that self-doubt, like, especially I was pretty green when I started, so like, are people gonna respect me? Are people gonna understand that I somewhat know what I'm talking about? And albeit I don't have hundreds of transactions under my belt, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of the industry and how things work. So probably sort of recognizing that people do respect and appreciate, even though I might not have this plethora of experience when I first got going, was maybe one thing that looking back on it, like I'm thankful that people, accepted that, and allowed me the opportunity to kind of take up a leadership role and kind of build some things out. So I would say that's probably one thing, but yeah,
no, that's a good answer. Katie?
No, this is
that's a tough one. Yeah, you
put
I have my thoughts in my mind. Of being the lawyer.
No. Rephrase it for me in a different way.
Thank you. What personal challenges did you have to overcome coming from a lawyer and sitting in an office, right? Because I imagine that's pretty much what you were doing, to now being front facing and actually interacting with people?
Ooh. I don't know. Like, it's
Is
hard.
she shy? Is she shy?
No.
Not at all.
Not
I'm
at all. Okay.
totally not shy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that there's and again, this is not to sound one way or another. I think, I don't know if I see it as a challenge, but for me personally, I think it is.
I think it's one of these things. It's difficult to look and reflect when
Yes.
it's you, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes it
100%.
challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think being,
I mean, I think an impressive thing from her perspective is just like showing up out of nowhere. And I would say like the one thing that, I recognize most about her is just like this, I'm going to do it and figure it out attitude. And like, there was never this, she wouldn't come to me and be like, oh, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I don't know if I'm going to make this. It was just like, here's the plan. Like, here's what we're trying to achieve here. Do you want to be a part of this? Yes. Okay. Well, like, let's get to work. Right. And then it wasn't like, oh, I'm having a tough day or things of that nature. Now there's always bad days
Were you always like
in
that?
life. Right. But it's
I
just like,
think it's funny. I was having this conversation. Thank you, by the way. I was having and I'll answer for him too. I think I was having this conversation ironically the other day, and I think I learned in my 20s how to be resilient. I moved quite a bit just with work and took different job opportunities for one reason or another. And I think I have this level of resiliency that just enabled me to kind of pick up and do it like he said.
Right.
And so I came into real estate and I was like, I'm in Jacksonville. I'm not moving for the foreseeable future and I just need to figure it out. And so that is kind of just what I've done, and I've recognized, I learned really quickly what it takes to be successful in this business. I surrounded myself with good agents. I looked at what other good agents were doing, and I was like, I want to be that. And I think the one thing I've learned about real estate is it's not only is there there's limitless opportunities, but you can be really good if you commit to being really good. And I think that is just where I'm at, is I am resilient. Like you said, I can just pick up and go and I'll figure it out, but also just being committed to being good. Like, I want to be good at my job.
yeah.
When you go in to take a test,
I'm a bad test taker.
are you a bad test taker?
Yes. Well, if it was
You
like
get,
an
you
English,
get nervous? When
I
you
don't get nervous, but multiple choice is not my thing. When I had an English minor, and so I could go in and write essays. That's why I enjoyed law school, is because it was essays. I wasn't looking at can't do multiple choice. I'm not a test taker.
She was stressing about the exam.
Yeah, I definitely
Even
was.
though, like,
Most people do it in 2 weeks. I was like 3 or 4 months. I was like, I'm going to take my time and do this right.
Well,
Yeah.
I just, because I have the same thing. It's like, a lot of people have brought that up to me. You just go and do it. You take the first step.
Go.
And then what comes at you, you deal with it. Where a lot of people want to sit back and say, hey, throw all the things at me first, and then I'll step in.
Yeah.
And I think an attitude that, at least, when I go to take a test, I'm like, well, this test is made for average people. I see myself as about above average. I've read the material. I should pass this test.
That's it.
I don't get all
As long
hung
as you
up.
prepare and you
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
like you're ready to go.
And I think the other thing is too, is like, I've realized, because of like that I get to work with family, it is a family business. Like, at least I feel this way. Together, like, we can't fail. And so I could, let's say, we'll make it the simplest example. I could go to a listing appointment. Maybe I don't get the listing appointment, but what do I learn? It's not catastrophic. It's okay. We will figure out how I can do better the next time. There's this element of like, we cannot fail. Yes, there are things that have been thrown at us over the last few years. Sure, everyone goes through that. But like he said, like, with our dad helping us out and then having him, I can go all in because I can't fail.
Took a lot of weight off your yeah.
Exactly.
You didn't have 4 kids at home, and like, if you don't
Yeah.
get this deal, they
It's
might.
like,
yeah.
I'm going to be bummed because I want the deal,
Yeah.
but it's not the end of the world. And I think that is the nice thing about real estate, is like, okay, we learn and we move on to the next one.
Right.
And I think not having to be dependent on anybody else and having the support that I do, nothing really ever goes wrong. Like, it's never as bad as it seems. And then I do want to get back to your question about him.
Okay.
Because I do have to say this.
What, did he learn about himself?
Well, yeah, no, proud big sister moment always. He mentioned him being a leader, and he is a phenomenal leader. And I'm a little bit biased, but his temperament and his work ethic and his approachability, I think, are why our brokerage has been able to grow. And I think it's why we have the agents that we do and why our agents are successful. obviously we're in a great industry, great market, but it really comes down to the support that he provides all of our agents. Like I said, I'm a little bit biased, but he's a phenomenal broker.
All right, I'm gonna take something you said and then what you just said. You felt very confident because you felt like, well, if I didn't get this deal, I'm still going to eat tonight. And so you took that pressure off of you versus other people who are in different situations. Does he, in his leadership role, do you feel he takes a lot of pressure off the other agents as far as like when they need him for negotiation and advice or how to handle, customer issues that may get a little heated or that conversation goes on where you're saying you go to your dad? Is he stepping in and making them feel like you feel?
100%.
Yeah.
I think people don't appreciate how important it is to have a broker that is always available. And this is not a sales pitch, but he is always available. And again, I think it's just his temperament, his approachability, like the ease with which he sees things makes agents say, okay, like I'm in a bind, but I can call him and we're going to figure this out.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that he touched on at the beginning. That's really hard to find. It's hard to find people in this business that you can go to and say like, okay, I'm really struggling here, or I don't understand what to do with this client, or I'm not prepared for this appointment. Okay, well, he's going to step in and 100% we're going to figure this out.
Right.
So yes, absolutely. I think all of our agents would say he's always available. He's always happy to help. He shows up to appointments when they need it. He's always in the office. And I think when he didn't have it at first, so he understands how important it is. Whereas if you haven't had that, you might not know what you're missing.
Right.
And so I think if any new agent does hear this, it is that when you are talking to other brokerages and you're looking at getting into real estate, you do want to find a company that is going to support you, and you want a broker that's always going to be available. So yes, to answer your question, I think he takes the pressure off our agent just by being available and being always happy to help.
Well, just having that, and I think it goes for any sales, but having, been in sales probably longer than you guys been alive. When you have that sales manager that's going to step in, you have somebody, whether something goes awry, and they step in with the confidence. They're not emotionally. They keep the emotions part out of it. I was cutting a reel for Christina Welch, but all the things you were just describing are a lot of the top brokers in the area, because they're giving their team that confidence that they're going to help them figure out the situation no matter what it is.
I think that's what it really comes down to. Because to be honest, most problems you can solve. And a lot of the times the agents call me, they know the answer to the question they're calling about. They're just a little bit unsure of themselves because maybe they haven't done it a bunch of times.
They want to hear somebody else.
They need that confirmation, right? Yeah. So a lot of times and what I like to do is I like to ask them a lot of questions as well. I'm not like, I'll give you the answers to the test. It's like, let's actually think through this and learn the question you have, so that we don't necessarily have to do this every week.
Well, right? You want to empower them, right?
Yeah, and so a lot of times they're calling me. It's just confirmation. It's like, hey, I was just thinking, can we do this here? Hey, this is a strategy I'm thinking about for presenting this offer. How do you think about it? And so I love that aspect of the job, and I encourage that a lot. I'm like, please talk to me more often. Like, give me a shout. I'm always available. I always say to them, like, I've literally never missed a phone call from my agents. I make that a point because I do think it
takes
is
a
like
lot of stress off.
Yeah, it's just really important. Like I just distinctly remember my first deal. And again, I love my broker, so this is not a knock on him, because I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up seeing this. But he's an awesome dude, but like maybe not quite as available. He's got a family, he's got things of that nature going on. So I remember being in the middle of my first deal and like having no clue what I was doing, and like that phone call you're hitting on a Friday night is like, hey, I'll call you back on Monday. And I'm like, I don't know if that's going to work, Yes. And so like that's been a pretty important thing for me to uphold and make sure that we have as part of the sort of culture in the office, is that availability and just being able to answer questions. Because like I said, most of the time they know the answer, and it's a 3-minute phone call and we're done, and they're comfortable, they're confident, we're getting a deal done. So like that's a win-win for everybody.
Well, that leads us in. Tell us how Tom. Tell us how the team is structured.
Yeah.
What do you got? I went on your website. You got a list. I don't know. Was there I don't know. I didn't see who was a transaction coordinator.
Website's in the middle of a rebuild right
needs
now.
an update?
Yeah,
Okay.
needs a little cleaning up.
Yes, like
Yeah.
what kind of support do you have? Because I think a lot of agents, and we can lead right into recruiting.
Sure.
Because obviously agents looking at, okay, what kind of support are you going to give me if you want me to come over to KST? So tell us a little bit.
So I think maybe the easiest way for people in the industry to understand it is it operates similar into a team, but everybody is a single agent. A lot of times people think we are a team. That's not the case at all. We're a completely independent brokerage. I'm the broker. We run everybody is a single agent underneath us, right? So there is no team leader. There's none of that stuff. However, as far as support goes, it would provide everything that a team would, right? In terms of technology, so CRM, website, lead generation, things of that nature. Support, obviously, myself being available, transaction coordinator, some marketing assistants, really everything you need from what I say is like first conversation to the closing table. And so you want somebody along every step of the way and throughout that process. And I think it really starts with, having the right technology in place and having a good CRM. I think it's so fundamental in this business, and it sounds really lame and it sounds really boring. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, I know I need to call Jim this afternoon. And it's like, okay, but you need like 50 Jims in your pipeline so that you have consistent deals.
Right.
And I think a lot of people misunderstand that. They're like, oh, I've got a couple people that are ready to buy next month. And it's like, okay, who's buying in 3 months? I don't know. Okay, well, that's probably something we need to work on because you have to create that longevity in your pipeline. And if you can manage it from your phone, your pipeline's probably not big enough, right? And so you need some infrastructure.
You guys haven't been to enough companies to do it, but you might have seen this in your previous company, broker that you were working for. A lot of them have this great CRM, but if it's not easy to use,
they're not going to do it.
They're not going to do it. If they're not trained properly on it, they never really do it. I've had agents sit here that have been in the business for years, and one of their big regrets, I wish I started my CRM early, but most likely I can tell you from experience of being with different companies, they go, hey, we got this CRM, and they give you this 30-minute, hour-long webinar, which no one's paying attention to. I hate webinars. I don't think you truly. There's certain things for it occasionally, but to do your entire training on it,
it's crazy.
Yeah. But they're not really taught. Like, okay, what is it you want? Because the CRMs do so much, right?
Yep, they do.
I want to take the name and I want to take it and put it on this list so a birthday card goes out, whatever it is.
Yep.
And they're not breaking it down to that.
Yeah, I think it's sort of my responsibility to show them and clarify with them what's the reason we're actually using this. Because if I just show them how to do it, they might do it for a couple of weeks. But if I show them what actually comes out of doing it successfully, she's a great example. She's really dove into the CRM and like genuinely used it for the last couple of years. And now, she'll do 15, 20 million in her third year in the business, pretty damn good. And a lot of that I would say is like, it comes from using that CRM, and here's why. It's the staying in touch with people, I said at the beginning, over a long period of time. And what's beautiful about our CRM, without getting like too nerdy in the weeds about it, is
he's
like,
a tech guy, if you couldn't tell.
I was going to ask that question earlier.
It's stage based, right? So you'll basically have a communication stage of how frequently you need to talk to them, and then the smart lists is what they're called. They run automatically, and so they'll only populate in that list when you need to check in with somebody. So if you have a database of 200-300 people, like if you had to comb through those 200 or 300 people every single day, you just give up because it's just overwhelming. It's too much. Whereas if the system just pulls out those people that you need to talk to on a daily basis, then like she just checks in 1 hour a day in her CRM and her follow-up's done. Right. And so it's not like I'm asking the agents, hey, it's 7-8 hours a week or a day you got to be in here, and like you're really gonna have to grind out and learn everything in this. It's just like, hey, get in, check through your smart list, make sure you're following up with the people you need to follow up with, and like the rest will take care of itself. I automate a lot on the back end for the exact reasons you've talked about. It's like agents just don't want to do it, and like they shouldn't necessarily have to. My goal is like they need as much field time as possible, but you have to have a powerful back end engine, and we've kind of built that out. So it's a give and take process. Some agents use it a lot, some agents don't use it quite so much, but I think there's a baseline that we get everybody to. That's like, this is the bare minimum. You have to do this, just because like it's coming from a place of like I genuinely want you to be successful, and like I literally know this is the way.
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about before. You're handling a lot of that. You're trying to make that back end so easy for them,
and very robust.
Sitting in front of the computer, because we get distracted, social media, whatever, and we never actually, what should have took 5 minutes is taking an hour, and that time you're just eliminating that
all
from
of it.
Because as a lead leader, you want everyone to be successful, but everyone's going to be successful at different levels.
Sure,
and
everyone
so
has
forth.
different
But if
expectations.
you can get them up to a baseline and know that, hey, I've got so many agents and they're all at least producing here,
That's
you're
exactly
obviously
right.
making, as the business, making the income that you expected, and then everybody who goes above that is icing, right?
Yeah, definitely. And we have ISAs as well that will work through the CRM to do a lot of prospecting and things of that nature. We have some AI involved with it too that kind of helps with some of the follow-up automated texting. So we take out a lot of the grunt work because, like I said, that's not why people got into this business. And so I think we can automate as much as we can while still creating that human touch, that human component to it, so that from the consumer's perspective, we're not just like some robotic company just spamming them with unnecessary messages. So it's really important for us. And then ultimately, we have a few more components to it: transaction management software, things of that nature.
Well, let's twist the conversation a little bit, because I had recruiting on here.
Yeah.
Are you actively recruiting? Who are you looking for? And then obviously blend that into what you're talking about, the benefits of coming over to KST, as far as what you're doing on the back end to make their life easier, so that they can be doing more what they want to be doing, which is either showing the house or going to their kids' ball game.
Yeah,
and hopefully getting both in, right?
Yeah, I'd say we're always recruiting, but I think there are some periods when we're actively recruiting, and some when we're just, if somebody comes by, if we're introduced to somebody, that's always open to a conversation with somebody. As far as kind of what we're looking for, I think generally we're looking for agents that have a little bit of experience, but nothing too wild. A little bit probably kind of, I hate using the word younger because I just think it has these bad connotations.
Dynamic
Just
and
kind of,
fun.
Right. And I think you can kind of see us on social media and kind of see the group of agents that we have already. I would say our biggest thing is like a full-time commitment from the agent level, is we do not want part-time people. There is a place in this industry for them, and there are many brokerages that will take them. We are not one of those. And I think it's really important to maintain that in the office. So we have a minimum of $5 million a year that our agents have to produce. We do a lot to help them get to that $5 million. I'm not an unreasonable person. If you're brand new in the industry and you've been in for a few months, maybe the expectation's a little bit different. But after your first year in the business, I feel like it's a reasonable target to be getting there. And agents that want to be a part of something fun, something a little bit different, and kind of this new spin on a brokerage. And I think that's what a lot of our agents are there for now. We've got a really enjoyable culture. We do a lot together outside of the office. We have incredible vendor partners as well that very much similar to the way we operate and what we're looking for. And then the big thing is having a big vision and a big goal. I mean, we want this to be a very large brokerage, not just in Jacksonville. We'd love to expand throughout the Southeast and wherever else it may take us. And so I think if there's people that maybe want to be part of something that's a little bit bigger than themselves as well, and being a part of a team environment that's willing to grow and willing to provide opportunities. I mean, pretty much everybody that we've moved into other positions in the brokerage have all been with us from the get-go. We're not parachuting people in from the outside. We're not outside on these massive recruitment trips.
Right.
We're doing it and building it from kind of a grassroots level, and I think it's really created a foundation of success for us, but also I think it's created a culture where people want to work with other people in our office, and they want to bring their friends in. And so the agents are always reaching out, hey, I know so-and-so in the business, they want to get together, they want to talk. I think every single person that's joined us has been a referral from somebody else in the office, which I feel like says quite a bit about who we are.
One of the biggest things, I think one of the probably number, I think by Jacksonville, by just Jacksonville, they are Christina Welch's team, and I've known them from the day she started that. She's gone through some growing pains. I had her on in January, and we were getting an update of what was going on, and how, I don't know if it's 3 or 4 or 5 years now, she's surrounded herself with a core group of leaders in there. Of course, they are buyers. They do the buyer-seller thing at the Keller Williams type thing. But retention. I would imagine it's just listening to you here, and I don't even know from other than what you've just, everyone's heard you talk about.
Yeah.
Have you, is that a thought that you've had? Have you had enough people leave, come and go, that your actual thought is on retention, or have you been just, because you're doing what you're doing it good, you haven't had that challenge of figuring out a way to be better at retention?
Yeah, I mean, I think you should always have a mind to retention, but I think it's about creating a good experience when they're there, and that ultimately leads to retention. As far as retention that we've had, I think there's maybe been 3 or 4 agents that have left, and I guess the easiest way to explain is every agent that has left the industry.
Okay.
They weren't leaving us to go to a different brokerage. They were getting out of the business altogether.
Right.
So, knock on wood for any of the agents that are watching. Hopefully none of them are leaving. I don't think any of them are, but no, we haven't had any agents genuinely leave because they weren't getting what they needed with us and wanted to go somewhere else.
All right. So new agents coming on.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming over to talk to you. They're the what was the words you used just a few minutes ago?
Oh boy.
Instead of younger.
Not
Dynamic.
Dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody told me that. They're like, stop saying young. Just say like
it is a bad word.
Dynamic. Just people. When you say dynamic, people just think like, okay, young
Yeah,
and fun and ambitious and that.
It's literally not an age thing. Like, I don't
It's
care
not.
about the actual number.
Right.
It's like who you
It's
are
like
as
a
person,
mentality
right?
and
That's excited about the industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's fun.
and so forth.
Yeah.
So, what is this discussion? What are you? I mean, really, just simply spill it out, because I think what you went over a lot of your dynamics. But when you want to break it down to that agent who's really focused on front end, they don't even really know. Especially someone new in the business, they don't even know what the back end even looks like.
Yeah.
So a lot of what you're talking about is like, whatever.
Yeah.
But because I mean, in your experience, I mean, that agent just coming into your office that may have a little bit of experience or is green.
Yeah.
I mean, what are they wanting from a broker right now?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's similar in the fundamentals of the conversation of how you talk to clients or potential clients, right? Is you want to understand what their needs are, what are they looking for, why are we even having this conversation? There must be something that sparked it, right? Maybe I'm thinking about what's getting you into the industry? And so I think if you understand what the agent is trying to achieve is really important, and then also making sure that the expectations are aligned. For example, in our business, we've had probably half of the agents have come in with a significant personal network, right? And so they've been in Jacksonville for a while. They're locals. They've been here, or maybe they've been in the industry for a handful of years, and they feel that their business is in a good place. They don't necessarily need a ton on the lead generation side. Whereas I might meet with some agents that are absolutely brand new that are going to need the lead generation. So those two conversations are obviously a little bit different in terms of the support and like what the actual scope of work looks like, right? If you need lead generation, you're a lot more on the phones, you're a lot more prospecting. I like to explain it in the way of like, think of it on a spectrum where it's like all the way on this side, you're 100% outbound phone calls, and all the way on this side, you're 100% inbound phone calls. And the only way to transition to this side, which is like where everyone wants to be, is by doing deals, right? And so I always say to them, like,
keeping up with your CRM and
Sure.
doing all those.
which
which results in the
to
deals.
doing
Yeah.
deals. And in my experience, it's around 40 to 50 deals, right? Where your business really starts to work for you. A lot of people want to avoid, they want to get all the way to this side of the equation without going through the crap of doing 20, 30, 40, 50 transactions. And there is just literally no skating that. There's no avoiding it. And so I'll explain that in a lot of my interviews with agents is like, depending on where you are in your career, like, we've either got a lot of work to do and we're going to have to hit the phones pretty hard, and we're going to have to do whatever we can to generate business, or we can think about refining your business a little bit more to things that you want to do, things in the community, things within your own sphere. If you've got 40 deals under your belt, like, how do we monetize that and work
So
that?
you're young enough and small enough brokerage right now, so you're nimble.
I think it's incredibly
Extremely.
important.
Right.
We want to remain that way regardless of size.
So that new agent coming in, I think obviously one of the biggest concern is, where are they going to get their leads? Or if they have been living here, what are some things that you're doing? Or Kay, you may chime in a little bit on some of the things that you're coaching some of these new people to really attack their sphere, because those are really the first weeks of phone calls, is calling everybody as we can download our phones now on these apps, and there's thousands of people on our list, and half of them we don't even remember who they were.
I think
they are.
I think one of the things that we've been telling our agents, especially is we've brought on a few new agents this year, is kind of splitting your day, right? I think the prospecting and the phone calling is probably the least enjoyable part of the job for most people. So you kind of have to put that as part of your day. Let's say you wake up in the morning.
What's that book? Eat the Frog?
Eat the elephant, one mouthful at a time.
One mouthful at a time, that's what I...
There's another one, Eat the Frog, too. I think that's a
Similar.
Yeah.
Tackle the thing you dislike the most right
first.
away.
But it's a necessary evil in this business. You have to do it. There's no getting around it. And then it's kind of like, okay, once you've knocked out a morning of prospecting and, your admin, and what does then the rest of your day look like? And for us, that's kind of encouraging our agents at this point in time to be out in the community. We have we encourage our agents to find out what they really enjoy doing. Like, we have a couple agents right now that love door knocking. Okay, how can we support them in doing that? We have agents that we just hosted a coffee morning. One of our agents loves to do that. So how can we support them in that? Showing up to events. There's just a multitude of other things that the agents can find time in their day to do what they love, provided that they've done the stuff that they might not love earlier in the morning. So I think for us, it's like encouraging agents to find that balance in their day-to-day, because again, it comes down to consistency. They need to have a day-to-day routine, a week-to-week routine that they can do over and over and over again, because ultimately that's what's going to get them the deals and the results. So I think for us, it's like encouraging agents to find that balance and really honing in on what they love about the job, because unfortunately there's just going to be parts that we don't love.
Obviously, social media too. That's a big one now, and the kind of agents we have as well, pretty active on social media as it is. So I think that's a great opportunity for them, and kind of working with them in that sense too. Obviously, I'm sure you have found like it's the opportunity of it's as big as an opportunity as you want to make it right now on social media, and so you can reach anybody at any time in any place in the world. And so I think it's just a multifaceted approach. We talk about like kind of lead pillars quite a bit. It's just like understanding you need to have a variety of ways to fill your pipeline, because at the end of the day, if you can always be adding to your pipeline regardless of where they're at in their life cycle, their sales cycle, if you can just continuously grow that top number, the bottom number that comes out in terms of deals will grow as well. So it's just adding meaningful context.
You mentioned 5 million is what you try to strive for as a minimum level for you. So if they're not on pace, or they're one of these agents who are in their first year, are you saying, hey, you need to be in the office at 9 o'clock because we're gonna do this as a team? There's gonna be 3 or 4. Get on the phone and use that camaraderie a little bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we mandate.
Get them eat that frog or eat that elephant that we're talking about.
I wouldn't say we mandate people to go in the office. Our typical schedule looks like Tuesday trainings, and those are kind of dependent on what's needed at the time. If we've got a handful of new agents, we'll typically do that for like a tech onboarding and just make sure they get up to speed. And then Thursdays we have team meetings. That's like required time in office. Obviously, there's no requirements in our business because we're all 1099. But it's encouraged time to kind of be around and have that camaraderie. And then a lot of it, I'll just do one-on-ones, whether it's like an informal or a formal. We obviously do monthly and quarterly reviews where we're kind of getting together and chatting with the agent and understanding what they're trying to achieve, as well as like what the future looks like for them. But then also I'll just pick up the phone and chat with them and just see, hey, how are things going? What's going on? Do you need any help here? What's your pipeline looking like? Do you have some potential deals in the works? If not, let's get together and chat and really see how we can solve that and grow the opportunity base.
What challenges are you seeing the agents having today? I mean, what are they coming to you with?
Probably prospecting and just being able to do it consistently when it's not always the most fun thing to do. But I think a little bit, and this is just a macro trend, is also inventory is still an issue. Like when you have those good buyers, particularly now as buyers see the market softening a little bit and they know they don't have to rush to get an offer, and it's like, okay, well, this house like is 90% of the way there. In the past, they're like, I'm jumping on that. Like if I'm getting to 90 or better, I'm in, right? Now it's like, I'll let it sit for another couple of weeks, see if they do a price reduction, and also wait and see what else comes on the market. And so definitely dealing still with inventory issues. I mean, you hear in the news all the time, well, people aren't leaving their 3% rates. It's probably an accurate statement. But again, like I think a lot of it is just building those relationships, finding potential opportunities, and then converting them once they get to the finish line. I mean, everybody can do an easy deal, right? A cash buyer or somebody that's like rock solid financing. They find their dream home. They're like, I'll pay any price. Okay, that's easy. It's all the ones below that are pretty challenging, that I think if you're not fully experienced and maybe not quite comfortable having difficult conversations with your clients, it's probably quite a bit of what our conversations are about.
No, my wife had one this weekend where they made the offer on like Thursday. Well, the listing agent actually let it expire and then finally came back to them, and they're waiting and like, well, he never responded yay or nay. And like, what was going on? So they went and found another condo with more square footage for a lesser price. And it was like, oh, this is actually better. Yeah. And then the listing agent calls back and they're like, oh, that man, we already went and found another place because you didn't even respond. Yeah. You let days go by.
That's crazy.
How do you?
It's crazy.
That's probably another challenge we face quite a bit.
Yeah.
Well, I always, you got to have a sense of urgency. As Quicken Loans, they called it ISM. The sense of urgency is the ante to play. you know, and how some people, you still have to have a sense of urgency, and you don't know who else is looking at that property. Someone, if you don't, you drag your offer or drag your response or the counter offer, and someone comes in with cash while you're dilly-dallying around.
Oh, it happens.
Yeah, you know. What do you think? You know, Katie, you're out mixing and mingling with some of the other agents. You're hearing, you know, what other brokerages are doing. I'm sure you're watching. You know, you hear when people come in and talk to you.
Yeah.
What do you think overall in our industry that on a broker level, or even you can break it down, maybe even a team lead, basically that leader, basically the role that Tom's doing. What do you think overall in our industry all brokers could do better?
Answer the phone. And I say that because I talk to a lot of agents, and that is the one thing that a lot of them struggle with is getting the support and getting the help, and they feel lost and they don't know how to do X, Y, and Z, and they're looking to other agents to help them, or if you know, they might be a listing agent, they're looking to the buyer's agent to help them navigate the transaction, when really that is the broker's responsibility. So I would say, again, I'm not a broker, so I'm probably not best placed to answer this question, but I would
that's what they're saying.
Just answer the phone and just be a little bit more available and be helpful, because agents, especially the agents that I talk to, again, newer in the business or younger in the business, it's we just want the help. And I think that's what I hear, at least.
I think availability is definitely a big thing. I think probably training is another component. I'll be honest with you, and certainly not trying to ruffle feathers, but I just think, generally speaking, there should be a reasonable amount of agents per broker. I don't know if it's fair to go this 1,000 agents per broker route. I just don't think it's good for the industry. I don't think it's good from the consumer standpoint. You know, I mean, I'm sure you or your wife or anybody, you have those clients and they're like, oh, well, I had an agent and he literally didn't know what he was doing. He almost screwed us. He almost got us into a bad contract, whatever it is. And there just needs to be some general oversight there. And so I think having, you know, if agents are thinking about making a switch, having a good relationship with a broker or somebody within the organization to genuinely answer the phone and answer questions 24/7, 365 when you pick up the phone is just incredibly important. And it's not often when things are going good, right? They're usually picking up the phone because something's happened. It's not oh, hey, by the way, I just got a sick deal done. It's usually hey, we're kind of in a mess here. I need some help. And so I think, like she mentioned, just availability. I mean, you hear it everywhere. And it's not just Jacksonville. It's not one specific team or organization. It is everywhere in the industry. I mean, I'm on the Facebook groups and things like that, and you just see all the time, people from other places, they're going into Facebook to ask questions that the broker should be resolving, right? I mean, it's just one phone call. Usually, like I said, talking about our agents, they're usually not challenging questions, and most of the time they know the answer. And, you know, we often, get into a lot of legal trouble and things like that in our business. A lot of times it's just hey, what do I do? Do I make this quick edit here? What amendment? What language do I use in this contract? Things like that. So the availability, I would say, is probably agents' biggest issue.
Katie, what do you think are three that if you had a peer approach you and say, Katie, you're doing really well, I want to get into real estate. What are a couple of things you'd tell them?
The first thing I think is be prepared to work. I think there's a misconception in the industry, thanks to social media and Netflix and those kind of things, that you can get licensed and all of a sudden,
I hear is the
exactly, and all of a sudden,
that's a good one,
exactly, and all of a sudden you're selling these beautiful houses, and that is just not reality. I think it takes time to build a really good pipeline, and to do consistent business, you have to work at it every single day. So I think the first thing, we're pretty honest with people when we're chatting with them about joining our brokerage, is that you do have to put in the work day in and day out, and just develop a routine and be consistent. So that's kind of the big one, I think. And then the other one, I always think too, and I think this is what has helped me, is just focusing on the relationship with people. I know we've touched on that quite a bit today, but leverage those relationships and build them and get to know people and understand people. The transaction will eventually come. I think it is a transactional business. We are focused on the numbers and we are commission paid, so the numbers are a big deal, but I think we encourage our agents, and what I focus on is just building that relationship. the more relationships you can have with people, the more deals you're going to do. And I think kind of those two things, the consistency, the routine, and the relationship building would be the big things for me.
So you've got this person that says, yes, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do. I'll follow. I want to shadow you. Between the two of you, what do you think are some of the traits, though, that a real estate, if you're having that person that's never done real estate in front of you, and whether or not you're going to pour in a bunch of energy into them, what are some characteristics?
I think personability is a big one, right? Like being able to sit across the table from somebody for an hour of coffee and like actually have a good conversation and have fun. Like you're never going to learn a lot about somebody in an interview because everyone's putting on their best persona, right? Everybody is like the perfect version of themselves.
A friend of mine, someone says, two people lying to each other.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But generally, you can get a good enough understanding of like, okay, can this person go and spend an hour at a client's house, and like, will that client feel comfortable with them? I think that's a really important one.
I think the other one is a willingness to learn and just being open to asking questions. That's a big one for us. We're both always available, obviously him more than me, just our roles within the business, but I think that is something that I really appreciate about people is when they can sit in one of our team meetings and ask questions, or they can call him or they can call me and ask questions and just be willing to learn more. I think in this business, you're always learning. You're learning something new on every transaction. If you're not prospecting, you're not out and about. Are you listening to a podcast? Are you reading a book? Just having that motivation to learn more and be the best possible agent. So the asking questions thing is important to us as well.
Curiosity. I mean, we touched on it. That's a big deal. Because like when you're consulting with clients, like if you don't know the why, you can't really solve their problem, right? If you don't know truly what they're trying to achieve and, you know, what their goals are in selling or buying or whatever, it's going to be really difficult for you to come up with the optimal solution. Whereas if you are curious, you ask a lot of questions, you get that understanding of what they're trying to do, makes your job way easier as well.
Which I think people downplay or just don't give credit enough to what you say. Like reading the books in the podcast, it gives you a lot of verbal ammunition, especially just to sit down and have a coffee and just say, hey, man, I read this great book recently, and boom, now you're off on this conversation, which generally ends up in the other conversations because you're filling your mind with, well, hopefully you're reading a positive book. You're not reading a horror drama or something like that.
No,
or you're listening to a positive podcast or something of that nature.
But if it's real estate related too, I think it helps our agents build confidence, especially when you're new in this business. I think a lot of times they call him and ask questions and it's not because they don't know, it's just that needing that affirmation that they are thinking and, you know, telling their clients the right thing. So I think just listening and continually asking questions and wanting to learn just builds that confidence for these newer agents.
We're coming up right here, almost short. We're short of an hour and a half, so I'm going to wind down.
Sure.
Is there anything you guys want to add? I told you before. Is there anything you guys want to talk about KST or Katie about yourself of why, you know, someone should work with you?
I mean, I think we're pretty cool people to work for. I think we're fun. I think we're building, as he mentioned before, we're building something. It is at the end of the day just us. And so if you are an agent that's, you know, in the business or looking to get into the business and wants to be part of something that can grow and you're excited about opportunities and you want to build something with an awesome group of people, then definitely reach out. I mean, I think we're pretty easygoing. We're easy to work for.
Yeah, I mean,
I like work with.
Work with. Correct. You are correct. You are correct.
Like, obviously, you know, not the biggest brand currently in Jacksonville, things like that. We're a younger company, and you know, I think we've done a really good job over the past few years of building a quality brand and sort of remaining intent on keeping it clean and like making sure that we have the right people involved. And I think one thing that is lost on this business is like, is there a place you can go where you genuinely want to be with your coworkers? Or is there a reason that every single real estate office is vacant all the time? Right? Like people just don't show up.
Let me brand, because I think, would you agree, it's really not a Keller Williams or a Remax or a KST Group. That's not why people are buying. They're buying because of the person that they're working with. That's who they want.
Yeah, I think
that's their brand.
I think it's absolutely a big component to it. I don't think many people are sitting in living rooms and, you know, having that objection of like, well, you work at this company and I've never heard them before. Like, who are you? No, they're trying to see who you are.
They're going,
right?
Katie's great to work with.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, that's what they're.
I wouldn't be surprised if half clients don't even know which brokerage their agent works at, right?
Exactly.
They probably have no idea unless they see it on the contract somewhere.
100%.
But no, I think we'd love to bring on a few more agents and people that have a strong commitment to the business and genuinely want to succeed at a high level. I mean, we are fortunate to be in an industry where you can make a lot of money, and I think we have a really good foundation and sort of pieces in place to allow them and a good platform to allow agents to succeed. And we'd love
Have
to
fun
bring on
doing
a
so.
few more
Yep.
and kind of grow this and become a
All
major
right,
player in this
this is
game.
the last informal question I ask at the end of every podcast. Each of you must form your own answer.
Okay.
Hopefully it's different.
Okay.
Is it more important who you know or what you know and why?
Well, the classic answer is who you know, right?
Yeah.
That's what everybody.
That's mine,
Yeah.
but that's not always the answer.
Can the answer be both?
Yeah.
They've answered that as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously who you know is important, right? But I think also what you know is important because that can lead you into other rooms and can get you into different conversations and allow you to meet people. So it is a very challenging question to answer. I think it does go both ways, but obviously
That's the analytical mind right
your,
there.
your network is important, but I think your knowledge is also incredibly important.
I think the lawyer has a different answer.
No, actually, I was going to say relatively the same thing. I think,
It's
who
like
you
we're
know-
from the same
yeah.
family.
Who you know is who you know. You can always meet more people, right? And you can always learn more.
Right.
So I think they're both equally
It's tricky.
important. I think being able to sit in a room with people that you might not necessarily know, which we do in this business quite a lot, you're having conversations with people that you don't know,
Right.
that knowledge is extremely important.
Yeah.
And that knowledge can then lead you into relationships with other people. So
Yeah, okay.
I'm kind of
Yeah.
on the same
What's
page.
your answer?
I am. If I was leaning 51-49, I mean, because both those. It's actually a question. I mean, there's no wrong answer.
Yeah.
Right.
It's obviously based on your experiences in life and so forth. But you're right. But I mean, knowing who, like, hey, I want to do something, and knowing someone over here that you can go, like, hey, I want to get into real estate. Let me go talk to Tom and Katie, right?
Sure.
And that may lead, and I may know nothing about real estate other than what we, the average person lives with, right?
Yeah,
And learn. So, and then, who's going to move you to the next level, right?
Yeah.
Knowing some people might be that next agent but obviously it's backed up. That person's recommending that agent to come to you because of your knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot.
It's a
yeah.
very
It's a good,
challenging
yes,
question.
that is a good question.
Yes.
I actually feel like I need to go back now and listen to your other podcasts further back so I can see
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
other people have answered those questions.
Yes, exactly.
What do most people say?
It
Well,
probably-
the reason why I said the lawyer actually was Christina Tatum with.
we work with them. Yeah, great people.
Christina was who?
Okay.
I think Maria was what
Okay.
you knew. In
Yeah.
there. So you had two attorneees
Yeah.
with two different things, but I put you more in the Christina category.
That's funny.
it is one of those that can totally go both ways. So,
Yeah, well, that's
the
the
point
interesting
of it.
part of the question to get everyone's gives
And I
a
think
perspective. Where
it's
people
quite
come from.
situational as well.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
depending on what you need at that point in time.
There are
as
some
well.
people that do go strong with like what you know, and I'm like, okay, well, you could be the MIT grad, but
Yeah.
And know how to build a nuclear bomb, but if you don't know people that want to buy that thing, you don't.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
And knowledge is ultimately finite, right? Like
Yeah.
you can only have so much.
Yeah.
You can only fit so much knowledge in there, but like if you know 100 people, you've got 100
Yeah.
different brains you can tap into.
Yeah, I guess
So-
you could be good at what's that, Jeopardy, right? If you knew the encyclopedia and all those other things, you could be good at Jeopardy.
Yeah, you can win a few
Yeah.
card games or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
But appreciate you guys coming
Thanks,
on.
Jeff.
That's a great
no,
show.
Thank
and-
you so much.
Well, I'm sure we'll cut